Welcome back. This is Chessometrics. I'm FIDE Master Samuel Weber. This will be the first analysis of one of my own games that I've recently played in a tournament at the weekend. And there were a lot of crucial moments that I would like to show you. So let's have a look. So my opponent was a very young youth guy. He was very motivated and he played the move d4 against me. So I started with knight f6, the usual move that almost everyone plays. There's also d5, of course, but knight f6 is also one of the two standard ways of playing this position. So c4, e6. Maybe I would play the Nimzo Indian if allowed. I wasn't sure at the board, but maybe I would have done that. But instead he went for g3, so the Catalan type of handling this position against e6. And now the idea is just to stop bishop b4 Nimzo Indian. But I can still give a check, that's what I did in the game. To just play the Bogo Indian against the Catalan. And there's bishop d2, after which black can play queen e7, a5, c5 is a move sometimes, you can take as well. So there are a lot of options for black here, but my opponent chose to play the more ambitious line with knight d2, where you keep pieces on the board and you try to play for a long-term advantage in the center with e4 later. So it's all about the fight of this square. Yeah. Who gets control of this square will usually have, either white will have the advantage or black can equalize by, for example, playing b6, bishop b7, or d5 controlling the square. And white will try to play bishop g2 and e4. And then knight f3 or knight e2, depending on what black does and depending on which direction the game will go. So I just wanted to take the game into completely different waters and played the move knight c6. A very interesting move, attacking the d4 pawn, but now clearly my opponent was out of book. I saw his reaction was not happy. Yeah, he wasn't happy at the board, and clearly this is a surprise to almost everyone because this is a rare line. I think something like this Caruana used against Keimer once. Not maybe this exact position, but the idea is just to play d5, control the center and make pressure on d4. But of course you are a bit stuck and the c-pawn cannot move anymore. You cannot challenge the center anymore with c5, so maybe it's not that great, but still you have some ideas with it. My opponent played a3. Usually then after a3 you take on d2. It's a rule of thumb in such lines. Queen takes, of course not bishop takes now because knight takes d4. Queen takes d2 happened. a5, just stopping the move b4. It's always important not to allow white to gain space on the queen side. Gaining space yourself is very nice. Sometimes a4, you fix the structure, get some squares long term. So this could be an idea. But mostly it's about stopping b4. And then my opponent shocked me with the move d5 because this reminds me of the Black Knight's Tango defense. So usually there d5 is not such a great move because the knight just jumps to e5 as in the game, and you attack immediately the weakness on c4 and you are ready to castle, and then you have a big development advantage. Yeah, almost every piece of white is still on the back rank, so this gives black a decent game. He played queen d4, d6, bishop g2. I castled, getting my king into safety is main priority here. And then he fought for a long time and played knight h3, which of course looks very strange. The knight is misplaced on h3 and it will go to f4, but then what? It's not clear what it's doing. So yeah, this was a bit strange, but I think he was afraid of knight f3 takes e5, getting some kind of King's Indian structure. This bishop is bad, and now the move a4 maybe to fix the structure, and also later getting the square c5. Maybe f5, e4 at some point, and getting some kingside attacks. So I think that's why he played the move knight h3. And now I took on d5. And this is the first interesting moment where I would like to stop a bit. If you want to pause the video, you can do that. You can try to find some ideas on your own. Very important, I did not check this game with the engine yet, because I really want to express my thoughts first and then later look with the engine. And it's always important in practical games to find good ideas and put the opponent under pressure. And here, I think it's very important to know that the first thought that comes to mind is that you have the knights against the bishops, and usually then you should play actively and fast with the knights, because the bishops long term are much better in an open position like this. So usually you should play something like rook e8 or something like c5, immediately attacking the queen. Yeah, let's say c5 takes, maybe knight takes, even getting some fast play. The knight on h3 is a bit weirdly placed. So this could be a strategy for black, and it would be probably okay to play like this. But I was wondering what is happening in this position. And then I thought, in such structures, King's Indian structures, or Benoni, the bishop on g2 usually is bad. It's looking at his own pawn on d5, and then the bishop pair does not make such a great impression. So I thought I can also play long-term positional play, strategical play, and I immediately tried now to get my knight, which is not so nice on f6, to a better square on c5, targeting the weakness on b3, and then fixing with a4. So I played the move knight fd7, which I really like, also getting out of a pin with bishop g5. And I calculated that b4, which would be the logical reply, is not so great, because now I still have a development advantage. I can get the bishop out, queen a8, queen f6, some tactics with discoveries, rook a8, a lot of ideas, and still his pieces are a bit strangely placed, and the king is still in the middle. So I thought I have good play here. And if he's not playing the move before, then I will just easily play a4 myself, because I will fix his weakness on b2 and also getting a square on an outpost on b3 for my knight. So he played bishop g5. I played queen e8. He has to castle, it's logical, knight c5. Now threatening a fork, he has to go rook d1, for example. And now I play the move a4, of course. I just, as I said, fix the structure long term, getting nice outpost for the knight on c5. The knight on e5 is also nice. And still, these pieces look not so great. But, once again, in such positions, now black is strategically quite happy. White needs to counter that with dynamic play, with active chess, and try to create some mess, some dynamics, some tactics, some kind of that, because otherwise strategically black is just better. So he played the move f4, of course, just to gain space and maybe crush through with f5 or e5. And then I just went to g4, threatening knight e3. And there are two lines now to calculate, at least that's what my feeling was, e4 or f5. And after f5, after e4, you can again pause the video, try to think a bit. There were a lot of moves here, but I thought I found a very nice reply if he had played e4. He went for f5 instead, but e4 was an interesting option, and you can pause the video and try to find some ideas. Yeah, and you're completely right that there are a lot of different options, such as queen b5, knight b3, f6, f5, h6. These moves are considered all of these moves. And for me, I came to the conclusion that actually this bishop is a bit misplaced. So I could play either h6 and f5 or f6 and f5. And the idea of that is that after e5, knight b3, now the queen probably has to stay in touch with the pawn on e5, I thought. Now I can take, and win a pawn. Let's say like this. And it was extremely important to include f6 first, because if I play f5 first, then e5, knight b3, queen c3, takes, and at the end of the line, the bishop is securing the knight and the pawn, and I was even thinking ahead, but I could not judge this endgame because it's quite dangerous with this passer, and he has the bishop pair. The knight is coming now to some good squares, bishop c4 check. So I was not sure about that. But then I found this f6, and I was happy to see this nice in-between move, knight b3, and thought, okay, I would go for that. But still, I could also play something like queen b5, and then after e5 create counterplay with knight b3, because I can even get some checks now on this file, and then knight e3 fork, for example. So a lot of interesting options here. But my opponent played the move f5. And now he threatens to take the knight. So if I go to e5, his idea was f6, and now he either wins equality or destroys my king side. And I did not like that at all. Pawn structure, king safety is very important in chess, especially in such positions where white needs to play dynamically. You have to really be careful not to allow some pawn storm here. So I did not like the option of playing knight e5. So I saw the move h5, and I was very happy with it. I just cement the knight on g4, and now the drawback of f5 was that he gives me this square for my queen, and I get a lot of activity on the dark squares now. And he continued with the move e4. I responded with queen e5. I thought it's a strong move to create queens because I have these two nice squares. And now he went knight f4, attacking the h-pawn and also threatening some h3. And here, this is a moment where again you can pause the video, try to think for some 4 or 5 minutes and try to find some idea on your own, because it was very tough for me at first to find the idea that I've played in the game. But after that move that I played, my opponent collapsed. He fought for 15 minutes, got into time trouble, and I won the game, which we will see. But here he had still a good position, I thought, so I had to be very careful. So let's see what the solution is. The solution, in my opinion, in practical play, for example, this is very important. Yeah, if the engine will say something different later, okay, I will take that into account. But my move was the move g6. And that move shocked my opponent so much that I really felt that this was the key moment in hindsight that won me the game. This move is very shocking. You weaken your own king. He still has a dark squared bishop, but I figured out that his threats are very strong, and the drawback of the move knight f4 is that the bishop cannot go back. So the bishop is a bit trapped. So I thought about f6 g5, but then he has en passant, and I lose the game. So then I thought how I can make this playable, and then I saw, wait, I can stop his idea knight h5. Also now threatening f6 g5, trapping the bishop. And if he were to take on e5, I get this with tempo, take e5 and f6. So I thought this is very nice. And I thought something like knight e2, f6, bishop goes, something like g5. And then the knight can reroute here. I also have some knight b3s. But it's still a bit annoying maybe after bishop b4, but still it's a very, very interesting position. But instead I saw that I can also just take on f5, and I thought that this is the option that I would have gone for, and probably, yeah, would have gotten a nice game here. So, yeah, g6 is a shocking move, but it's a very instructive resource that puts the opponent into shock. And he played h3. He still had 4 minutes now only for 20 moves, and I had 15 minutes or 20. So I used my time well, saw that I could trade queens now, put my knight on the very nice outpost e5, 2 beautiful knights now. And this was the idea of g6. Now the knight protects g6 and h5. Everything is protected. And still I have some ideas of f6, g5 at some point, trapping the bishop. So he played g4. In time trouble also very good. He wants to create some very active play. And I took the pawn. And now the last critical moment in the game, where I really spent like 7 minutes of my time, I think, to really calculate till the end. And I saw a very long line, and it happened on the board, so I was pleased afterwards, of course. But I really had to see it. So the first thought that I had was to take on g4. Once again, you can pause the video if you want to find what I did. And after FG, knight G5, knight G6, rook F1, bishop F1, I wasn't sure at all what this position is. I think I still have control, but it's not winning, so I wanted to find something better. And then after like 7-8 minutes, I decided that I can actually play the very nice move King G7. I think this is one of the best moves that I've played in this year, because the idea is to firstly protect G6 so that I cannot take on G4, but also to threaten F6, G5 again. So the only move for him is F6, I thought. And then the calculation is very forcing. So we go back one move, King G7, F6, Nakamura style now with all these arrows, King H7, King F2, threatening checkmate ideas. And then I thought bishop takes G4, rook H1 check, bishop H5, and if he were to take, I take, and King G6 will fork the rook and the bishop. So he has to play rook D1 after bishop H5. Then I thought, okay, rook H8. He played rook H4 to double up and mate me. And then I saw that he does not actually have a threat. I just went King G8, rook H1. And then I saw I had to visualize. It's very difficult already. Yeah, make sure that you can really visualize these lines. And if it's too difficult, try to train your visualization by just probably taking a book and try to calculate blindfolded or putting the position out of a book on the board. So this is how you can train visualization always. Also pawn end games are very good for that. This helps. And yeah, and when this position happened, I saw that at the end of the line, I can activate my worst piece to collect his weaknesses. And when this finally happened on the board, I was so happy to get it. So let's now see the line. King G7, F6 check, King H7, King F2 threatening rook H1, bishop takes, rook H1, bishop H5, rook D1, rook H8, prophylaxis against this doubling of the rooks, King G8, rook H1. And now I understood, in the visualization, that rook A6 now wins the game. I just activate the worst piece. It's a very beautiful moment, and my rook will go pick up these pawns. I have the beautiful control, and he does not go anywhere with his attack, because that's what I also saw is that I can, after the move bishop H6, which happened here, I can just protect against the mate. And if he were to stop this by eliminating that knight, I could have gotten the other knight to E5. And then I have such a beautiful domination, and my puzzles are just running. So this is a beautiful position to highlight. But instead, he played the move bishop G7, which immediately allows a very basic tactic that you probably see. Rook takes G2. And my opponent resigned, and yeah, that was it. So there, I want to make a small recap, because there are for me always like 3 to 5 critical moments per game. And here I thought that the first critical moment was how I should proceed after this knight's h3, because it's a bit strange. So knight fd7, I took this route to get my knight to c5 and maybe b3. Then I found a very critical moment after f4, knight g5, f5, h5, that I get the square on e5 and cement my knight. Then, of course, the insane idea of playing g6. That was a very, very important resource. And then, as I said, the move king to g7 to really clinch the win here. Because now he's, I thought at least, collapsing because of f6, g5 ideas, and g4 is hanging, and I have this beautiful control. And then he collapsed in the line that happened in the game. And yeah, at the end, I had this nice finish with the tactic. So these were 3-4 critical moments, and I hope you enjoyed the analysis. It was a very strategic, dynamic battle where both sides had chances, but I always try to make sure that I'm one move ahead in the calculations. And the move g6 was really the turning point where he spent too much time and he had no time to figure it out in the time trouble. And also it was a shocking move. That's what I always say, that in such dynamic strategical fights, you always should make moves, find resources that put the opponent under pressure. And g6 was that kind of move. It shocked him, it put him under pressure, had a strong idea, and won me the game eventually. So take care, and I hope you liked the content, the video, and please subscribe to our channel, and see you in the next videos. Bye bye.